Hey all, welcome in. This is basketball by association. Going with a little calmer route to come in, as I'm trying to uh, slowly but quietly calm down the Milwaukee Bucks as they are red hot. And we've all been talking about the Suns lately. Then, they need a little motivation to shut up already and knock it off. My God, what about them Suns? Y'all turning awful. What's up, Joe Cordes?
Hey, yeah, we can't get into all that. I mean, we need to have an open. There's protocols here to follow. We got to name the
Uh,
episode first, Arky Shea.
okay. Hold on.
It's
Let me. Hold on.
it's
Hold on.
episode
Hold on. Hold on. Hold
68.
on. Hold on. Here we go. Hold on. Here we go. Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Arky. That is Joel C. Cordes. Joel, nothing else has happened on this call until just now. What's up, brother?
Yeah, this is episode 68, and I don't want to disrespect the vaunted Detroit Falcons, who have already had one player named after them, at least one, maybe even two. I know they've gotten an honorable mention before this as well. But we have normally named our episodes after players that wore that jersey number. There is only one player in NBA history who wore number 68, but we're not going to name the episode after him. I'm sorry to disrespect Milt Schoon from the 1947 Detroit Falcons, but I'm not going to keep giving the Falcons their own episodes for guys that legitimately played 1 year on this 1 year team, it looks like. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of episode 68 being the Milt Schoon episode. Sorry, buddy. We're going to name it after the rookie of the year in 1968. We've done this before when no numbers exist. And in this case, you're going to like this one because he's definitely near and dear to New York Knicks fans' hearts, but he would also be near and dear to Washington Bullets fans' hearts. Do you want to take a guess on who we got here? Big time Bullets, big time Knicks player.
No, I was actually looking up something on Milt Schoon, so you need to go ahead and tell me. I was kind of out on this.
All right, this is the Earl, the Pearl, Monroe episode, and I figured you'd get a little more excited about that than Milt Schoon.
Milt Schoon was a name thrown out of left field for me, so I had to start digging into him since you weren't going to give me anything. So Earl the Pearl, you can be on any episode you want, my friend.
All right. So now we know it's good. It's made with real bits of Panther, and let's keep going.
Hey, by the way, Milt Schoon, if Wikipedia is correct, and I never doubt Wikipedia, he did have that season for the Detroit Falcons. Mm-hmm. But did you know after that he played for Flint Dow Chemicals?
I legitimately know nothing about anything about Milt Schoon or the Detroit Falcons, and I've lived in Michigan now for almost 13 years. So,
well, then you'll like this. The next 2 seasons, he played for Sheboygan,
which was an actual place and team. Yes,
yes, was a place. Did it get blown off the map or something?
No, I mean it's still there, but
they were the
back in that day. You would have had reason to go, watch a basketball game there. Now I'm not sure what your reason would be, except I think there's cheese made there, so you got that.
They play for the Sheboygan, a term you can't say anymore. Former, think of the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, he did his career with the Denver Refiners.
Wow.
Who were Western Division member of the National Professional Basketball League, which lasted a year.
So. What was the Dow Chemicals team called? Like the Hazmats or?
Look at you. So the interesting thing is I tried to click on the note for it and it does not
Dow went and wiped the records. That's what they did.
Joel, I like you for doing that. You know that?
Conspiracy theory time. Here we go.
I'm going to do basketball real quick, see if I can find it. Flint Midland Dow ACs.
So that could not have been like a national league of any kind. That had to have been like a Michigan or upper Midwest type of, barely glorified rec league, I would think.
Well, so the Flint Dow ACs were an American professional basketball team that played in the NBL, the National Basketball League.
Wow.
For the 47-48 season. and some interesting names. None of them I've heard of except for Milt Shune, who
Wow.
I just got introduced into my to my life. So that's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a rabbit hole looks like. You have
Yes!
witnessed it in real time.
I should also let you know they went 8-52 that year.
Oh, that's probably why they're wiped from the downside of things.
Milt Shune, by the way, averaged 6.3 points per game that year.
And in the end, we've spent more time talking about him than
Yeah.
Earl Monroe, which is a shamockery and a travesty, and we got to stop this. A Travis shamockery.
It kind of is, but like, come on, like, how much more we're gonna dive into Earl Monroe? I mean, Milt Shune's on this list. Oh, anyway, so Milt Shune.
Fire up your 2K teams, everybody. We need a Milt Shune build.
We are going to do you proud, Milt. And by the way, my next son will be named Milt.
Milt the Pearl.
So Milwaukee, the furious comeback in the second quarter of that game, especially, and wow, they're a game away, Joel, from winning a world championship. They get the 4-point win over Phoenix. Some fantastic individual plays in that game.
Yep.
Joel, before we get to that game, can I say that despite the fact that there's been the lack of LeBron's got to be in, where are the Warriors, where's Clay, this has been a thoroughly fantastic series to watch.
The only people, with all due respect, who are saying LeBron's got to be in, where are the Warriors, are tools. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Like, this has been good basketball. It's been fun basketball. It's been refreshing to have a different set of teams, a different set of players, a different set of storylines. I respect LeBron enormously for all of his charitable contributions, but I don't need to hear the kid from Akron story in an NBA Finals puff piece for the 8,700th time. Like, I just don't. I'll be happy if he gets back to another NBA Finals. I'm not rooting against the guy in that regard, but at the same time, this has been great, and anybody complaining about that is just a tool. Like,
yeah, and the individual games,
get off LeBron.
The individual games have been like so drama filled and like so tense and so like, you know. So my big worry coming into this series was that not just a sort of Phoenix sweep or anything like that. My big concern was like Giannis may not be ready for game one, and if he's not ready for game one, maybe he forces a game for game two, and then maybe aggravate something, and then we have a 4-1 game 5, the gentleman's sweep that would happen in this series, or maybe even worse. But what you've had is Giannis, who knows what the extent of his injury is at this point, but playing out of his mind basketball, doing what has to be only able to be done on legs and knees that aren't actually injured, and making some really, really, really fantastic, like eye-popping plays in a series that's been dominated by sort of the streaks of this series.
And while it is accurate to classify as out of his mind, I think even more accurate is to say his greatness has come from playing within himself. Understanding that just because he wasn't hitting free throws early in this series and, in previous series, that he would still be able to be effective, to go back to searching out areas where he can take high percentage looks for himself, but also driving with a purpose, moving with a purpose, setting up passes for other people, which he's been very good at as the series has progressed here, to understand all of the ways he affects the game. And again, to overcome that fact that he continues to struggle mightily on the road from the free throw line, that his jump shot has come and gone, and more often it's gone. And even that some of the point blank stuff has been a little bit shaky at times because he's getting hard fouls, because people know they're going to put him on the line above all else at this point. They're not really worried about the and one anymore. But he has very much played within himself. He's been out of his own head, which, probably a better compliment than out of his mind, out of his own head in every aspect of the games now, it seems, except for at the free throw line in Phoenix. But you'll take it, right? I mean, you'll take everything he's given you so far because hey, you can only go up from here at that free throw line.
Especially if you get, Drew Holiday finally coming in strong with 27 and going 12 from 20 from the field, an efficient 27 points from him. And we sort of wondered what this series would look like if Giannis had to feel like he had to take over every single game, or if Holiday and Middleton were able to sort of get sort of the swagger that was able to get them to
and get that swagger in the same game together, right? Because it's been like one guy or not, or neither, and then they're really screwed. That's when they lose.
Because think about it, Devin Booker's done a couple of back-to-back 40s, and they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing about Phoenix that I've sort of been so impressed with throughout this entire postseason is that they haven't sort of played outside themselves, right? Like they've sort of been in control of who they are. They know the type of basketball they play, and they play it so well. Chris Paul's been a great leader for that. He sort of is able to control this team the way it needs to be controlled. No one's trying to go outside of their own body kind of thing to sort of play. But it feels to me with 17 turnovers in Game 5, it feels to me they're losing a little bit of the grip of sort of at times, especially. And I think maybe part of it is Chris Paul's probably a little bit hurt, and Devin Booker feels like he needs to sort of pull some more of the weight of the team. It feels to me they're losing a little bit on their identity and who they are. That they've kind of lost the plot of the Phoenix Suns right now, and they need to sort of regroup and refocus and try to cut down that big number down, because they were up like 16 at the end of the first quarter. Like, it's not like they're way off the mark.
No,
it's just they go like a big spurt where Giannis and company beat them by like 19 in the second quarter or something to get back in the game and start to try to take control of it. So I mean, it's not like they're way off. It's just like I see more cracks in their foundation than what I thought when I saw coming into this series. Am I way off?
They are glaringly a big body short right now, because the Bucks continue to wear them down over time, and eventually that size really begins to matter for Milwaukee. The extra possessions off of offensive rebounds, the ability to keep pounding the ball into the paint and then kicking it out. That size even on the defensive end of taking away some of the lanes. And yes, Chris Paul and Booker especially are still able to get to that mid-range, and they're still knocking down shots. But the Bucks have done an excellent job of taking away just about everything else. Booker and Paul can't get any further than that mid-range shot. And the backdoor cutting that was so good for Phoenix has been nearly non-existent over the last 4 games, because even when you do get backdoor cutters, there's long-arm defenders waiting underneath to take away those lanes, and they're taking away the lob. They're daring Booker and Paul to carry that scoring burden. Nobody else from Phoenix, I know Ayton had another 20 and 10, but nobody else is like really punishing the Bucks, coming from nowhere where you didn't expect that guy to do something. And then again, because like we've talked about this so many times already in this series, I don't want to recap all of it, but because the Suns are smaller to begin with and don't have that like great body match to go along with Giannis to go up against him, and few teams do, it then, when they've got to put Ayton on Giannis, is opening up Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis, or when Giannis is pulled away from the basket, it's pulling those drives, those lanes open a little bit more for Holiday and Middleton, especially to drive. A little guy like Pat Connaughton keeps getting to the offensive glass, number one, because he's a really good offensive rebounder, and the kid's got hops. He's got like top 5 NBA hops, and you can go back to the combine numbers to look at that. It's ridiculous, but his timing is really good, and he's often being put onto, somebody's guarding him who's either smaller than him, Chris Paul especially, or is so busy having to watch what's going on with the big guys in the paint that you're letting a little sneak in there and sky for rebounds. And Connaughton, Portis especially, but we've also seen Brook Lopez and Giannis, their ability to back tap the ball out and save possessions. The Phoenix Suns were big on winning on the margins. That was their mantra throughout much of the year. Well, this is a margin where they keep losing, and I don't know that they have really a solution to that. They've got a couple of big guys on the bench who I don't know that they're going to get any minutes. I don't think you're going to see Frank Kaminsky if you haven't seen him much so far. And I don't think they're going to, trust a rookie like Jaden Smith to come in and take those minutes either. So unless Abdel Nader, who's not really much bigger than the rest of these guys out there now, gets some burn, I don't think they have an answer for this outside of, hey, be more aggressive on defense, try to generate some more turnovers, get a couple easy baskets. And like you said, Arky, they lost by 4 in this last game. So
yeah,
you got to feel okay if you're Phoenix, but at the same time, you're 1 loss away from losing and you've dropped 3 straight now, including 1 at home. And that is a big deal.
Yeah, and you talk about those offensive rebound numbers. Milwaukee had 11 offensive rebounds in that game, which is a significant number to be able to continue those possessions, as you mentioned. Connaughton went for 14 points. He was a very good piece of that team. And if you look at just, again, the numbers for Phoenix, and I mean, both teams shot over 55%. Like, that's just
yes,
stupid.
they did, and they got an equal number of attempts, which is always one of the sneaky things I look at, because oftentimes that team with more attempts, it tells a few more stories, and because NBA teams are relatively close percentage-wise, you get a couple more looks, you win the game more often than not. But you go through that box score and rebounds, attempts, percentages, assists, turnovers, they're all within 3 of each other, 4 of each other. Like, there's not much wiggle room. And there again, that tells the story of a 4-point game. But did it really ever feel like Phoenix was in control except for that first quarter?
Yeah, it seemed like it got out of control quick in the second quarter too. I think what sort of gets a little lost in a lot of this is not only how tight this series has been, how the numbers have sort of looked, and how the Stars have put up sort of those numbers too. Is that big play that came out of Game 5, that big steal and lob and alley-oop to Giannis and the foul by Paul, like, they were what, 1, right? Like, when that happened, like, this wasn't just sort of going away and a couple of threes cut it closer. Like, this was a 1-point game,
right, with
the ball, right? That like, it's been, as much as we want to talk about the free throw percentage disparity, which showed up in that game, as much as Booker put up 40, we've had these issues defensively at times trying to match up with the bigs of Milwaukee, and how Giannis has had such a fantastic game sort of doing it. The backdoor cutting's not nearly as effective because of those long arms of all the bodies that Milwaukee's had. These games are incredibly close and tight. And I know Phoenix sort of has a lot to sort of could feel better about that big 16-point lead at the first quarter. They immediately give it away. But the 17 turnovers, man, like, if you're Monty Williams and you're Chris Paul, like, you cut down a handful of those, like, there's a good chance, especially that last one. Like that's one turnover that is the most costly of the turnovers. Like, if you just want to point to one of them.
For sure. But at the same time, like, yeah, absolutely right on all those turnovers. When your margins are that slim, any adjustment there is going to be super helpful. But let's be real. Chris Paul, all-time great point guard, and Drew Holiday, a first-team all-defensive player. Mm-hmm. And Paul turns his back a little bit. Holiday saw that opening to kind of sag in away from his guy and catch Paul when he wasn't looking. And it was one great player against another. And, Paul was double teamed and he didn't see it in time. And Holiday makes that play, gets out and runs. And that papers over the fact that there were multiple missed free throws by the Bucks at the end of that game, including by Giannis. But I think Holiday or Middleton, it might have been Middleton, was like 1 of 2 right at the end there as well. So, yeah, your margins are that close. It comes down to a couple of things. But Milwaukee, once again, like, they're winning, and they're winning ugly at times. They're winning tough at times. There's been some beauty in it too, but it's a testament to them. And we talked about that after the Brooklyn series, even, that, like, they just keep finding a way to get there and be there and get it done. And even when they're down, they're not really out. And even when things look really, really ugly and you're like, man, Budenholzer is coaching like an idiot and Giannis is playing passive, and where the heck are Holiday and Middleton? then all of a sudden the next game comes around and they've got it locked together, and you go, yeah, that looks like a championship team. So it is a credit to Milwaukee. I don't think Phoenix is dead yet. I said Milwaukee in 5 was my original, or Milwaukee in 7, sorry, was my original pick. I think that still very much could hold true, although now that's going to require both teams to win on the road. That's going to be a tough one, but Milwaukee, I used the analogy last week to some of those like ugly football teams that won Super Bowls, but they still got it done. And that's kind of been my impression with Milwaukee. Talented, no doubt. Can they play beautiful at times? No doubt. But there's a lot of stuff in there where you're like, why'd they do that? But it just worked. Okay.
Yeah. What was, so it was, what was it? Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday were, I think, 32, 29, and 27, I think, for that game. That's what, like 91 of their 123 points. And they still only won by 4, thanks to free throws, and you know, the Suns are still a decent team. Let me pose this question to you. I heard someone reference the Milwaukee Bucks as the most disrespected potential NBA champion to be in this sort of series, like where they are, the most disrespected, the most ill-spoken of sort of team in a while. And I think even heard one person, I can't remember quite who it was, it said that if Milwaukee wins, they would be the dumbest team to win the world championship that he's sort of seen.
Yeah, that was our good friend Kendrick Perkins.
Did he say that he was the one that called him the dumbest?
I think so. Yeah.
What do you think of the idea that, because I've heard a lot of people say not great things about Milwaukee and Mike Budenholzer about the way they've sort of won this thing, and we've done it too. We've sort of been, you know, right on the cusp.
Yeah, there's a lot of backhanded compliments flying around.
Right. What do you think about the idea that this team sort of being one of the most sort of, you know, undercut champions, sort of coming in, at least from a media standpoint?
Well, number one, everybody who's in the business of selling media has to, for some reason, go hyperbolic all the time. So you're going to get that. And whether that's grounded in reality, this whole ever, never, always sort of stuff is so short-sighted. And we've talked about that before, but that's how you get clicks. That's how you get eyeballs to your sagging TV channel, all of that stuff. But on the flip side, we all know what we've seen. We all know what we saw in that Brooklyn series, and that the Bucks wouldn't be here if the Nets had been healthy and Milwaukee played the way they played in that series. Like, there's no question about that. At the same time, we've seen Milwaukee play really well against Miami. There's questions now about whether Miami was really just not as good as we thought they were. Milwaukee played very well for the most part against Atlanta. But then you go back to, okay, Atlanta was down Trae Young for a while, and obviously Milwaukee was down Giannis for a bit too. Atlanta's young, but I think the Bucks earned that win, or that series win. And here in the finals, I don't think the Bucks have played as stupid by any means. You know, there's another one of those backhanded compliments.
Yeah, how about all that nice stuff to be like, they've been dumber this postseason.
They've been less dumber this time around. You know, and Phoenix played really, really well in games 1 and 2 at home, which you would expect. But I think the Bucks have been flawed, but they have been so good at what they do well that it has overcome some of those glaring flaws. Could there have been other teams out there, and certainly in other years, that would have taken advantage of this Bucks team and they might not have won the championship in a year of great parity like this? Sure, but that's one of those pipe dreams that you'll never get an answer to, and it's not worth asking because, yeah, that in and of itself is disrespectful to Milwaukee. We're like, well, if they would have played the Warriors, you know, then Steph and Clay back in the day would have destroyed them. And it's like, yeah, but you could say that about anybody, and there's no time machine, so that ain't happening, my friend. You got to go with what was in front of us right now. And Milwaukee's been flawed, but they've overcome those things. They've been really, really good at others. And it's a testament to the idea that small ball does not have to rule the NBA all across the board, because this is a big Bucks team that is not big and slow, but they can play big and they pound the glass. They do a lot of old school things, and Phoenix has not had those answers. And again, I go back to, do not underestimate, even if he was only giving them 15, 20 minutes a game, do not underestimate that early loss of Dario Saric from this series, because that was the only other big at this time that they trust. And defensively, he's not great, but he's not terrible. And offensively, he's a jackknife type of guy, Swiss Army knife type of guy who did a lot of gap filling for them to do other things, and would have required one of those big bodies from Milwaukee to be checking up on him, or you would go with a smaller guy like Chris Middleton. But remember, Middleton's played really, really good defense throughout this whole series. In fact, Middleton's played great defense dating back to the end of the Brooklyn series. You maybe had him on him. So it would have been just one other guy out there that a good Milwaukee defender would have had to pay some attention to. And he's not. I'm not making excuses for Phoenix, just like I'm not making excuses for Milwaukee. They've taken advantage of what's been in front of them, and that's all you can ask from your NBA champions in any year. And again, the Bucks are not champs yet. Like that ugliness, right? That ugliness is still lurking out there. The Budenhoozled coaching is still lurking out there. Phoenix is still a really good team with 2 more chances, maybe one, to try to get back into this series and pull off that upset now. Like there's a lot of things that can still happen yet. Right.
Remember, all this love we're giving Milwaukee, 17 turnovers by Phoenix. So they clean that up a little bit. We may be talking about a completely different way this series looks. Do you think that we speak about that about Milwaukee because we're looking to sort of find we're looking for a golden chalice, right? Like we're looking for a team to be like, they're the best, right? Like they're head and shoulders above everyone, as opposed to sort of realizing that, yeah, they're flawed, but most teams are flawed, and you get to a series like this with good coaching and good players that you should expect some ups and downs, and you should expect a tight series when it gets to the NBA Finals. These are supposed to be the 2 best teams left.
You know, the Golden State Warriors were a golden chalice team. There was no denying that. They were the best. Even in the year they didn't win the finals and Cleveland did, Golden State was the best team. Like they just were. Cleveland got one of those all-time upsets. No disrespect to them. Golden State was still overall the better team. And that's what makes the upsets against those golden chalice teams, whether it's the Warriors or you think back to the Heatles, that sort of thing. They got upset twice by the Mavericks and then the Spurs. And obviously the Warriors ran into the Raptors at some point too. That makes those upsets all the sweeter. The times that the Lakers showed us they were a golden chalice team, but then an upset comes along and, you know, the Bad Boys 2 Pistons take them down in 2004. That makes those wins that much more special. But you don't always have a golden chalice matchup. And this was a year where legitimately there was no real golden chalice team, right? There were really good teams. Philly looked great through the first half of the season till injuries kicked in. LA looked like they were that, the Lakers looked like they were that lurking monster in the West until the injuries started to rack up down the final third of the year. But outside of those 2 teams and the Nets continuously giving us sparks, you know, little glimpses where you go, oh man, that's a dangerous team when they're all together, but then the asterisks all pile up when they're all together. Outside of that, there was not that dominant team where you go, yeah, they are the front runners above all else. It didn't matter how many games Utah won. We all had that sneaking suspicion that, yeah, you got to show us in the playoffs. And it happened to them again. You know, the same thing was going on with the Suns. And Milwaukee was an afterthought. They were a really good team in the East that also contained a handful of other really good teams.
Yeah, we kind of thought they were getting past. Like
they were. We said it's possible for the Bucks to reach the finals, but they're not the favorites by any means. They're just in that field, and credit to them that they came out. So it's been one of those years. I said this when the series started. This is probably the first time since the 1970s, and this is why it feels so weird, where you truly have two kind of random teams in the NBA finals. It's not two dynasties colliding. It's not one dynasty with a new challenger or a random challenger that kind of got their way in, like, with the Heat last year into the finals, where it's like they were the 5 seed. What's going on?
Right.
Usually you get one, but to have both, unless there's a series that I'm like really truly forgetting about, you got to go back to the 70s where it was random a lot and there was so much turnover and parity, sometimes in negative ways, in the NBA at that time. Like, we're just not used to this. But to me, this is a wonderful change-up pitch as we kind of await to see, like, is there another dynasty lurking out there? Is it Milwaukee? Does Phoenix have a couple of appearances in them? You would think, theoretically, the way both teams are built, that absolutely it's possible. But even still, like, the first thing that's going to happen once a championship is crowned is Bleacher Report and ESPN are going to come out with their articles, predictions for next year's NBA playoff field.
And way too early predictions.
Yeah, we're already going to ask that question. Can the Bucks do it next year? Can the Suns do it next year? And the answer, honestly, has to be the same as at the beginning of this year. Yeah, I mean, they could, but I don't think they're the favorites. Like,
right.
We're in a great period of transition right now, and it's not a bad place to be.
No, it's especially if the NBA especially can find fresh faces they can glam onto quickly, like Lukas and Shea's of the world, and they can finally maybe give the torch to a Giannis, especially if they're able to win, pump up a Devin Booker out in the West Coast. Sort of like if you can start to glom on to these dudes and start saying, all right, this is the fresh generation, right? The other guys are still here, just like when Kobe was finishing and LeBron was starting to get into his prime. Like, these guys are still great and they're still here and we're still going to love on them. But here's a new set of guys. All right, start paying
attention. Just like when MJ was there and it was still Larry and Isaiah and Magic, or when Michael is going out and that new generation, KG, Vince Carter, Kobe, Tim Duncan, that sort of thing. You still had Barkley and Malone and Stockton and Reggie Miller and all those guys, Ewing winding down their careers too. We are exactly in one of those moments again.
What do you think Phoenix tries to do in Game 6 to sort of get back that momentum? Because Milwaukee's been really, really tough to beat at home. And to be able to do it on the road is a whole different animal, especially since we've seen what they just did in Milwaukee. Like, no one's chanting, no one's counting the numbers for the free throws and how long it takes for Giannis. It's just a different beast for them there. They struggled at times there. Chris Paul struggled a little bit at times there. It's the road. I mean, it's supposed to be tougher. How do you think Phoenix sort of cleans this? Hey, you know what? I want to ask you that question, but before I forget, and this is terrible podcasting to do, but I need to interrupt that question for another question. Do you think, because Chris Paul I think was a -6 on Sunday or Saturday? Do you think he's playing like pretty beat up? Like, it feels like that he may be a little, maybe more than just a little bit, like, banged up. That we're going to find out at the end of this series that, like, there's a pretty significant injury that he's just fought through this last couple of weeks.
By the way, if we ever rebrand the show, I want to call it Terrible Podcasting.
Okay, good.
That's just phenomenal. I almost want that on a t-shirt. Chris Paul has been inconsistent now. There's been times, where the camera cuts to him and you see him kind of holding the hand after certain plays. And actually, we've been told it's kind of both hands that are really dinged up. Kudos to him for playing through this, because that is a guy who's been taken out of way too many playoff series in his lifetime, in his career, due to injuries. So, yeah, I do think he's banged up. You haven't seen Chris Paul really taking too many threes or hunting anything outside of that mid-range. You haven't seen him getting into the lane very often. Now, part of this is because of how big Milwaukee is and what we talked about before, but you don't see him moving into those floaters or kind of that whirling dervish stuff in the lane. And part of that, he's been transitioning away from that as he's gotten older. But yeah, I do think he's dinged up a little bit.
Okay, so back to Phoenix in the and the less terrible podcasting that I was doing. What do you think they do to clean up the issues that they had in game 6? Hold on to maybe a 16-point first quarter lead and not let it evaporate as soon as they open the second quarter.
Well, I would get 3 to 4 pairs of Dr. Scholl's inserts per player. Sure. Stick them in your shoes. Make sure you're wearing your platform shoes.
Is that against the rules, by the way? Could you? Like, if you felt comfortable enough, could you do that?
I have no idea. I don't think there's any way that would be comfortable, but yeah, I mean, they're not going to grow. They're not going to get bigger. So it goes back to gang rebounding. You cannot let Pat Connaughton get 4 offensive rebounds or whatever it was. You got to cut that in half across the board for Milwaukee. You got to cut the turnovers. You continue to stay in the passing lane. I think you do everything in your power, even though they've been doing it more. Like, we didn't see Phoenix walling up the way they have until recently. And now the wall is really, really obvious. It's almost the level of what Philly and Toronto used to do against Milwaukee. But you dare Giannis to shoot from outside at all costs. Maybe you get into hack a Giannis, but see, that's not going to work in game 6 because it's going to be in Milwaukee. So you got to save that one in your back pocket for later. It really is about runs now. Milwaukee's going home. They've fed off their home crowd, who's been really, really good. You cannot let the Bucks get into a situation where they rattle off 10 points and the whole arena is just frothing at the mouth at that point. And we saw the Bucks really, really feed into that. And that's when those games got blown open a little bit in Milwaukee, especially game 3. So yeah, it's win the margins again. And is there somebody else besides Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton who's due for a really big game? You know, we've seen Mikal Bridges have one big game in this series. It kind of came out of nowhere. Crowder had one big one, but I think that was in the game 3 loss. They could really, really use like a 20-pointer out of Cam Johnson, you know?
I mean, you can't bank on it, clearly. But, like, you know, you go up and down again. If you just sort of stare at the numbers from what Phoenix did in game 5, like, their starters, like, did well for them. Jake Crowder gave you 10 points. Like, Jake Crowder's not always going to give you 10 points, double-digit points out there. Like, everyone shot really well for the most part in that game. And it's a big reason why they got up so big so early and put up with 41 in the first quarter, I think.
If I'm Phoenix, I am daring everyone in the starting lineup, not named Chris Middleton, to shoot the 3. I'm really packing it in. I'm playing the lanes because Holiday, yeah, he was 3 of 6, and Brook Lopez was 1 of 2 in game 5 here, but they've been so hit or miss on that. They have not been able to string together consecutive games from downtown. PJ Tucker can launch as many 3s as he wants. I don't care if he's 5 for 5. I'm going to let him continue to launch and beat me. I'm going to let Giannis take as many baited 3s as he wants. You know,
he only took 1, I think, in the last day, in like game 6 or 5. Yeah.
Pat Connaughton was 4 of 6. Bobby Portis was 2 of 4. But they got good looks, and a lot of that was collapsing defenses. So I might suck the defense in a little bit more so that it's pre-collapsed, that I'm not chasing as much. And I'm going to dare some of these guys who, yeah, they had hit some shots, but the track record has not been there for them to hit a bunch of shots. I'm going to dare them to do that in addition to the other things we talked about.
Do you think that the turnovers sort of take care of themselves, so to speak? Like it just was a bad night offensively for them to be able to lose the ball that many times? I mean,
there was some rushing, there was some forced passes, there were some times that Chris Paul didn't, look entirely right.
Well, that goes to a bigger question I was wanting to ask you about. Is that, do you think this Milwaukee team especially has more big game experience than this Phoenix team? And when Phoenix had house money after the first game and the second game, like when they were going in up 2-0 in Milwaukee, they sort of were playing, like I said, with house money. And that the more that the sort of the
here, let me jump in on the turnover thing, because as I'm looking at the box score here, and 17 felt right, but I'm looking at the box score from game 5, and it's showing Phoenix with 8 turnovers total.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Am I doing the game 4 numbers?
I'm not sure because Milwaukee had 11. You know, when you're talking 17, and I hadn't looked at them yet, or hadn't noted that, like it felt right. But I'm looking at game 5 right here, and I'm seeing only 8 turnovers from Phoenix, and we've got 2 from Bridges, 2 from Ayton, 1 from Paul, 2 from Booker, 1 from Torrey Craig, 1 from Campaign. And so we're spread out, you know.
I was giving you game 4 numbers. I had 17 in game 4.
Okay.
That's my fault. So Phoenix wins by 100, right?
Hashtag bad podcasting. Yeah, no, you keep your turnovers low at this point. We'll try to paper over all that as best we can.
I don't care at this point.
You keep your turnovers low. You got to cut down on the offensive rebounds. You pack the paint a little bit more so that the defense is not collapsing in a chasing way. And you close out on some of those guys and dare them to have 2 games in a row where they actually can hit threes. I'm not giving that to Middleton, and I probably don't give that same disrespect to Portis or Connaughton, who I feel like have been pretty consistent from outside. But in that starting lineup, there's a lot of guys who've been really up and down from 3.
Yeah, and I think this statistic is from the right game. I think Phoenix was like 65 or 67% or something from beyond the arc.
Right.
And they made over 10 threes in the game. Like, you know, it wasn't as if, like I said,
they're 13 and 19 from downtown. Milwaukee's 14 and 28 from downtown.
It's just hard for me to. Okay, so this is why I would be a terrible NBA coach, right? And probably an NBA podcast or 2 as I'm talking about it. Like, I watched that game, saw the free throw, the misses at the end, made up the 17 turnovers, I guess, in my head. I was reading the turnover and paying attention to the last one. Seeing that both teams shot over 55% from the field. Like you said, shot a similar number of attempts in that game to where it did seem like it was negligible at best. I don't know how I would fix this if I was Phoenix, right? I don't know how you bow up on the size of Milwaukee, still shoot your threes, have them go for 28 threes, but shoot 28 threes, only make 14. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not a pure win, but it's kind of a win, right? Like, have all of those seemingly decent game plans for you, right? Outside of, like, to have that go for you for the most part, and fix from that, which was like 250, 40 or 50 points, to think get back to. I feel like I'm talking in circles here. I don't know how to fix it. Is what I'm saying.
Well, we did say after game 2, when Phoenix was up 2-0, looked like they were rolling, looked like Milwaukee was in big trouble. We said, honestly, right now, the only thing Milwaukee can do is play smarter, play harder, those basic things. And you got to hope that you have a game where Devin Booker and or Chris Paul has a really shaky shooting night. That's exactly what happened in game 3. So if you're Phoenix and you're looking at that 4-point loss, and yes, you cannot control the fact that you're undersized. You can do the adjustments that I talked about, and I'm sure Monty Williams has even better ideas than that. But at the same time, you go, all right, there's part of us that has to also hope that you don't get another one of those Holiday, Middleton, Giannis games where all 3 are on. Can we get to another game where Middleton and Holiday are both struggling, or where Giannis gets put to the free throw line so many times or is laboring? Because remember, we keep seeing Giannis having to check himself out early in each half, which the ESPN guys have been pointing out a lot, and that's still kind of a mystery as to just, does he not have his breath? But if that's the case, then, you know, why is he able to play for lengthier stretches in there? You don't see him going to the sideline to get oxygen. He's not going there to get a cortisone shot or anything, you know, weird either. Like, he's just going and resting and then coming back. So whatever is going on there, like, there still is a lot of wiggle room, especially because we've said, like, looming behind all this are all of these bad flaws that the Milwaukee Bucks have shown us before. And so part of it, if you're Phoenix, like you make your adjustments, you play your game, you put yourself in position, just like they were in game 5. They were in position to win that one. And you also got to hope for a break the same way that Milwaukee, had they not gotten that game 3 break where Devin Booker, scores like 10 points or something crazy like that. I mean, we could be already looking at the Suns as NBA champions with the momentum they would have had.
Yeah, and to try to clean up the grossness of the last time I spoke, like I sort of see what you're saying, and maybe it's just the keep chopping wood thing. Like it was a bad game. It was you played the best basketball you
and
thought.
And it wasn't even a bad game, right? It's
a bad result, I should say. Yeah. So you don't go into a game 6 down 3-2 despite everything, all of those numbers saying, man, there's a bunch of stuff we need to fix in this game. You say, listen, those 3 guys combined for 91 points. What do you want me to say? Right? Like you guys played really hard, really well for the most part. They were just hitting shots. And so we were hitting shots. They were hitting just as many shots. And they had 3 dudes who just went ham, as the cool kids say. And you just lose those games sometimes. Like when you get 3 dudes like that to play like that, you're probably not going to win anyway. But you just haven't seen that happen in the series yet.
Yeah, and
you're probably not again, to be fair.
You go back to the offensive rebounds and you go, can we cut down on some of that? And actually, as I look at the numbers here too, the eyeball test and the stats say some different things. Giannis had 5 offensive rebounds. Pat Connaughton only had 1. So I'm just thinking of the one where I saw him sky over Chris Paul. And it seemed like more Bobby Portis had 3. But you try to cut down on half of those 11 offensive rebounds because almost all of those turned into points. And you do look at it and go, can we hold Drew, K-Mid, and Giannis to like 2 to 4 points fewer apiece? Can we just take away 1 to 2 baskets from each of those guys? If you can do that and cut down on the Bucks' attempts by even 3 fewer attempts total as a team, because you took out some of those offensive rebounds, you got a really good recipe there to be winning a close game 6.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch also Milwaukee with the chance to close out on their home court. How well they come out, because this isn't to go to the next round. This is to win the whole thing. And this group and this city has not been here in this situation in a long, long, long time. And so to sort of have that energy in that building with this team that's not been there yet, maybe they're in their zone and they'll come out and they'll score 35 points on their own in the first quarter. But it'll be interesting.
Here's how big this is in the city of Milwaukee right now. And this is a perfect description of it. My mom, who could care less about sports overall, does not care. Now, if she had to pick a sport to actually like be saddled with watching, basketball would be closer to the top of the list than not. Doesn't care about basketball whatsoever. She has watched every single game with my grandma, who has lived in Milwaukee her whole life, and my mom's from Milwaukee, but she's watched every single game with my grandma and has actually enjoyed it and has actually like called me after some of these games. And I'm like, have aliens abducted my mother, the person who does not care? Like, I grew up my whole life really into sports. Neither of my parents care about it whatsoever. My dad will humor me and watch games with me. Sometimes it's just a bonding thing, but he doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care about the outcome or any of that stuff. But yeah, she's been into it. My grandma is big into sports. That's probably where I get it from. My grandfather was that way too. But so yeah, it's huge. It's pretty big when Milwaukee residents who don't even care anything about sports their entire life are like, yes, I'm watching this. I'm into this. That's pretty cool. That's pretty special.
That's pretty cool. Milwaukee is a solid favorite in Game 6 to sort of to get their world championship and to be the 2021 champs. Joel, when we do this podcast on Wednesday, the Game 6 is on Tuesday night. Will we be talking about the champions that we have? Or will we be talking about the preview of Game 7 and the Budenholzer? The what do we call it? The
Budenhoozled.
Will we be talking about how we got Budenhoozled?
I've flip-flopped too many times during the playoffs. I said Bucks in 7, so I'll stick with Bucks in 7. But man, it's going to be tough going home. Milwaukee, I think now that they're this close, I don't see them coming in like sleepwalking into a game like we've seen them start off slow before. I think with the crowd behind them and everything else, like it could be, absolutely. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. And Phoenix is a legitimately good team with a lot of really fun weapons and a lot of good positive things going for them, obviously, for them to have been up 2-0 in this series. So I'll stick with Bucks in 7. Like so many recent predictions over the last couple rounds, I'm not real confident about it. I'm glad I'm not putting money on it. But yeah, we'll say Bucks in 7, and that on Wednesday, you and I will be previewing a big time game 7 that I think is going to have a lot of viewers, including those who are not sports fans.
Game 7 would be on Thursday, by the way, so we avoid the possible, for some reason, playing on a Saturday night. Game 5. Way to pick the good nights, NBA weirdos. All right, Joel, that's going to do it for us. I'm done betting on the series. By the way, I might play a total or two, but I've been getting killed this series, so I know when to take my britches home. Joe, we are done with this podcast. We should send a hearty salute, and I hope this episode made you proud. Don't listen around the 43-minute mark. Mr. Milt Shoon and Mr. Earl the Pearl Malone.
Monroe,
what I said?
You said Malone.
My fault.
Come on, he's your guy. He's from your team.
My fault. Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Well, everybody, you can catch Bad Podcasting over at YouTube if you want the video version.
Can we just go ahead and rebrand it for Bad Podcasting?
It might be one of those like sub things. We should have Basketball by Association : really bad podcasting or something like that. Although it's a lot. It's such a long title that maybe that plays into it of bad podcasting too. Yeah, you can find us on YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe, and of course, you can get the audio only version wherever you get your podcasts. This has been episode 68, the Earl the Pearl Monroe episode, not
Malone.
Not the Milt Shoon episode. We're out.